Hey guys, welcome to episode 4 of Undeterred. My name is Patrick Hart, and I'm here with my two co-hosts, Lisa Hermosillo and Jamie Selzler. We just want to touch base really quick. We have a couple interviews today. I was lucky enough to sit down with District 44 House Rep Austin Foss. It's his first session. He has a lot of great bills, and he's going to tell you about them in just a couple seconds. But before we get to that, I got to make a couple plugs. First of all, thanks for subscribing. Thanks for watching. Please share it with your friends. Please like, click, and subscribe like everyone says. And then also, if you're in the Bisman region, we have March 22nd, a Bisman Dems reorg. So all the regions, all the districts in our regions are going to reorg. March 22nd, Horizon 10 to 2. Bob Valou is going to be our trusted MC. And then again, May 3rd, reorg statewide is going to be here in Bismarck. We're going to have the governor's dinner, a fundraiser that night. We have an absolutely amazing, top-notch keynote speaker, but we're going to announce that next week. And then if you're in the Grand Forks area, March 1st, Ramada Hotel, 10 to 1. They have their reorg, going to put new district leadership in place, and there's going to be a soup contest. Nothing more North Dakota than that. Before I throw it to Lisa, I just want to pitch really quick. This week, I had the opportunity to testify in the House Education Committee on House Bill 1475, which is actually a Republican-sponsored bill to give students free lunch and breakfast. Now, notice I said I went and provided testimony on a Republican bill. I absolutely did, because it's good legislation. It's good government. We also have our own Lori Beth Hager, who's going to be on in a couple weeks, putting together a sister bill that also pushes for free lunch and breakfast for school children, both on the reservation and private schools. The difference is in House Bill 1475, those funds are provided by general fund dollars. Lori Beth Hager's bill earmarks some legacy funds interest money to provide for that program. It's a little more long-term. So if you guys want to provide testimony, please do so online or in person. And if you need any questions on what bills to support or how to do that, give us a shout, pat@DemNPL.com. Lisa, what's up with you this week?
Well, I also had the opportunity to testify at a hearing for the red flag laws that they were trying to ban. And so that was my first time ever doing that. And I was nervous, but it was something that I was obviously very passionate about too, because with my background in, mental health and suicide prevention and wanting to advocate for domestic violence victims, I really felt compelled to speak out on that. And of course, with my work with suicide prevention on the base, this really affects our airmen and our military families as well. So I was really excited to do that. And then I've also been very busy keeping track of other bills that could potentially impact our airmen. And so one that I really got into was House Bill number 1501, which is going to require a second form of identification for any out-of-state drivers. And a lot of our airmen do not have or come from other states that don't require that as far as like citizenship goes. And so I think that's going to cause some issues relationship-wise between the base and the community and law enforcement. So I, of course, wrote to, because I had missed the deadline for the testimony because I didn't hear about it, I didn't know about it, but I did reach out to the ones who had introduced it and let them know how that could negatively impact military families.
Lisa, what's your take on the red flag law change, and if you think, how likely is that to pass? What were you hearing when you were there?
Well, there were only two people that had testified, but it seems like I believe it was Representative Heilman who introduced it, and when he was had that time to answer questions from the committee, he did not seem to have a good explanation as to what prompted this bill to even come up. And so I think that was kind of a good point to make, that when people are introducing these bills and they don't have a reason for it, I think that the committee members were also kind of confused by that, thinking, okay, if you don't even really understand your own bill or why you introduced it, then why should we support that? So I'm kind of leaning towards that it won't, but there was a lot of good testimony that was submitted in opposition to it. So I think this one might actually surprise us. I don't know. I'm obviously hoping that it doesn't pass.
certainly encourage people to contact their legislators to ask them to vote no
Absolutely.
on that bill.
And I'm sorry, I got to jump in for a second. Now, help me out. Red flag laws is when there's history of abuse, of substance abuse, of spousal abuse, and there's a large amount of guns, of weapons, and police are able to come in and temporarily hold those for a while. Is that correct?
Yeah, so if a person is deemed a threat to themselves or to the public, that does give law enforcement the authorization to go and temporarily, that's the key word here, is temporarily remove firearms in an effort to save lives further on, whether it's preventing a suicide. And my big take on that is if we are told and entrust our law enforcement to make their judgment call on deadly force to save a life, then we should also trust law enforcement's judgment when they decide, I'm going to save a life here by saying I need to remove these weapons.
Yeah, that's fair. Jamie, you had a wild ride this week. Tell us about it.
Yeah, I apologize for missing last week. I was on my way to Washington, D.C. for our DNC meeting. Representing you was myself, Renee Arfor, our DNC National Committee woman, and Adam Goldwyn, our state party chair. Lisa Finley DeVille is our vice chair and would have been there, but she's in the legislature, and so she wasn't able to make it, but Adam did get her vote, so her vote was represented as well. It was a pretty intense couple of days. Our meeting started on Thursday. There was DNC meetings and as well as a variety of caucus and council meetings on Thursday and Friday. Very interesting. In a lot of those meetings, we were talking about the issues that affected that group. You know, for example, we have the DNC Rural Council, which is chaired by North Dakota's own Kylie Overson, and it was really cool to see her in that environment and leading that. And so a lot of the candidates for DNC chair and vice chair and the other roles come in and they're given a minute or two to make their pitch about what's going on, and it was very interesting how they would try to appeal to the group that they were talking to. The nice thing for us is throughout this campaign and during the weekend, there was lots of talk about how do Democrats change to appeal more to rural voters, to Midwestern voters, to red state voters, aware that anything we can do to move the vote even 5 or 10% in a state like ours could have major consequences, positive consequences for a lot of legislative seats and statewide seats. And so it was good to hear the campaigns talking about that. And we're very proud of Kylie for the work that she did. We had elections on Saturday where we voted on a variety of offices. We started with the national chair. We voted for about 12 hours, just over 12 hours. We were in the room voting over and over and over. I think we had a total of 10 or 11 different ballots we voted on. And how it worked is for every office, a candidate needed to get at least 50% plus one of the vote to win. And so most offices had many candidates. For example, vice chair at large had 13 candidates. And so it took, I think we took 4 or 5 rounds. Very interesting. After each round, candidates who got the lowest vote would get sort of kicked off the ballot. And then those who were getting a lower number of votes, you would see them talking to the other candidates, sort of wheeling and dealing and negotiating, saying like, you drop out, no, you drop out. And then for those that were dropping out, they were deciding who they were going to ask their supporters to vote for. So someone would get up and say, I'm withdrawing from the race, I'm dropping out, and please, those who voted for me, please go vote for this other person. Fascinating to watch in the room, to watch all that happen. There was also a lot of downtime because the voting was by paper ballot. It's not a secret ballot, but you put your name on it, you have to sign it. And then it took about 30 or 40 minutes between each vote as they were counting all of them because there were so many. Ken Martin was elected chair of the Democratic National Committee with 248 votes. He needed about 220 to win. So he won pretty well. Second place is Ben Wickler, who had 100 and some votes. Ken is well known in North Dakota. He's been in our state multiple times. He's campaigned for us, raised money for us, spoken at events, and just spent time here over the years. So your North Dakota delegation all voted for Ken, and so we were happy to be on the winning side of that one. But we had other great candidates as well, including Ben Wickler from Wisconsin and Martin O'Malley from Maryland. So we were really fortunate that day. A number of folks were elected to DNC vice chair. Raina Walters Morgan was elected as a vice chair for civic engagement and voter participation, which is sort of the top vice chair role. Interestingly, her role in the past has been as a staffer at the DNC who was running voter protection. And so she was running against 2 members of Congress. She was running against this really interesting gentleman named Michael Blake, who's also a candidate for mayor of New York, the leading candidate for mayor of New York City. And so here she is from North Carolina, pretty young, and wins and beats the others, including these really fantastic members of Congress. And so she's going to be really great. We're excited to have her running our. We're going to take a focus on protecting the vote, which is going to be really important over the next few years. And then we had a DNC vice chair at large, and so the big winner there was Artie Blanco, who is from Nevada, a labor organizer. We also have Malcolm Kenyatta, who, take my word on it, is going to be a senator or a governor one day from Pennsylvania. Trust me. He is a Pennsylvania state representative, young, I think 34. And then David Hogg was elected as the other vice chair. David is a survivor of the Parkland shooting, a founder of March for Our Lives, and very well known to many people in the country. And he's 24. He's the youngest person ever elected to a DNC officer position, and is really going to bring a different perspective in regarding how do we reach Gen Z and younger voters. He's an expert in it, and we're excited to have him. He spent a lot of time with the North Dakota delegation. We got to know him really well. We're excited to get him and certainly Malcolm here at some point here in the next couple of years. One of the interviews we have today is with Adam Goldwyn, the chair of the state party. And we're just going to talk to Adam about his experience at the DNC meeting, kind of his thoughts on how it turned out. He was also elected to a leadership position as vice president for our region for the Association of State Democratic Committees. So it's the group that all the chairs are a member of. And so because of that, he will have a bigger voice in the DNC, which is important to get us the resources and support that we need. So stay tuned for Adam's interview as well coming up.
Hey guys, Patrick Hart here with UNDeterred. Thanks for coming back. I'm really excited to get to interview one of our new House members, Austin Foss. Now, Austin is a House rep from District 44. District 44, and if I'm wrong with this, help me out. That's downtown Fargo, North University?
I would say, well, I guess it's even a little farther than that, but yeah, I'd just say downtown Fargo and North Fargo.
Sure. So
yeah.
Austin serves with Carla Rose Hansen in the House, and you share a district with Josh Boucher, former House, now moved over to the Senate. So that's the District 44 team.
Yes.
And I'll shout you guys out. If you need updates, District 44, I would say arguably has the best weekly update. How many people are on the list?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's hundreds there. Yeah, my team is the best. Carla and Josh are great.
So follow this guy online, sign up for those District 44 updates. And before we get into politics, who is Austin? You're new on the scene. Where'd you come from? Where'd you grow up? Tell me about you.
Yeah. So I actually grew up in Hatton, North Dakota.
Oh.
Yeah. So by Mayville area. Actually lived out on a farm. Both my parents are teachers. It's still our teachers. We're teachers. I have 2 siblings, a sister and a brother. Just had a great small town childhood. Came to Fargo to go to school for architecture at NDSU.
Oh.
Yeah, it was. I loved the program. I loved NDSU a lot.
Well, I grew up on a farm too.
Nice.
Were you guys green and gold, John Deere?
So it wasn't for a while, and then it changed.
Yeah, it changed too, right?
Yeah. So my dad, he worked for his cousins actually in the summers because he was a teacher at the farm. So
Well, one thing I'll just touch on. Again, I grew up on a farm. I was gonna go to college. There's no doubt in my mind. I was burned into me or going to school. But what wasn't burned into me was that I should come back home and work in the community and build up rural North Dakota. And I think that there is a disconnect. And now I am here in Bismarck, here in Fargo.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think there's anything we can do or we should be doing in our small towns to tell people go get an education, find out what you like doing, come back and do it locally in a small town? Do you think there's anything we can do to increase that?
Right. I mean, I think that the challenge grants are one thing that we do in this state, and we need to continue to fund those. Those are grants, given to North Dakota or graduates from North Dakota universities,
Okay.
And it gives them money off on their tuition if they stay in the state for a certain amount of years afterwards. I guess I don't know the data on it, but I know, I mean, I'm sure a lot stay within the state after that. And just creating a better environment to live here too. I think a lot of people harp on, less taxes, right? But I think, especially with my generation, our generation, the lower generations, I think there's more to where we choose to live than just lower taxes, right? And creating a more welcoming environment, right?
So I'm in my almost mid 40s. I own a business, have a kids, there's a couple investment properties. I'm starting to really think about taxes, but that's not what got me to Bismarck.
Right.
That's not what got me to Fargo. Was wildly not in that decision matrix at all.
Right.
And as a matter of fact, and I've been hearing property taxes for about a year and a half.
Yep.
What really gets me is actually how much insurance I pay. And I'm not saying that it's not necessary. When you need it.
Right.
But again, there are more than one thing that needs reform. So,
Yep.
So when we talk about reform, you have a couple bills that you're shooting this year. What are you pushing?
Yes, yeah. So one of my main bills is actually giving leave protections for state legislators. So, we live in North Dakota. There's not a ton of us, right?
Yeah.
Our pool is small, right, to get people to run. And it's only going to get smaller with term limits, right?
Sure.
We need people to run. We need good people to run, right? And we started out our legislature as a citizen-led legislature, right? And we want to continue that, right? We didn't want to extend our time in the legislature more than 80 days every other year, because we wanted people to continue to work, because we wanted those perspectives, right? And I want to continue those perspectives, right? I think there's a large majority of people in the legislature that are retired or have flexible jobs, but I want people that have professional jobs that maybe are less likely to allow them to be in politics and be representatives. And so we already give protections to state employees if they want to run for the legislator, and I'm just extending those rights to all North Dakotans.
Sure. Well, no, and I really appreciate that. As party chair and high level volunteer, I've had to do candidate recruitment, and to be really honest, we're looking at the short list of business owners, realtors, some high end bankers. Those are the people that typically have the opportunity to come to Bismarck for 80 days and as needed. But I don't know why you wouldn't offer that, because job security is an important thing. That's of course the democratic values, and why wouldn't we give it to them? Have you gotten any pushback? So is any unions pushing on you at all?
Yeah, there's a lot of pushback from business unions and businesses, just because it's seen as a burden, right? And I like to say, we give leave protection to the state. We give leave protections to military as well. We give also leave protections for maternal leave, right?
Sure.
Like there are things that we already do that give people these protections to leave for these specific items, just in military or being a parent. And I'm just saying that I think representing your district and being a part of the civic process should be on that level of where we should be able to give those people those rights.
Absolutely. And how about like supporting your employees, supporting their growth? And as a bill that came out last week, we talked about you could come out here for 4 years and perhaps you would end up a lawyer.
Exactly.
Yeah, we'll just send him to Bismarck. He'll end up a lawyer, and then we'll have a lawyer on staff. So supporting workers seems amazing. What else are you pushing? What else do you got?
Yeah, so my other bill is actually formalizing teachers' voices on school boards. So this, giving them the ability to be non-voting members on school boards, and I call them school observers. It's coming out of the teacher retention task force that met during the interim. And one of their items was, fostering a supportive environment for educators within that. And making decisions based on that. And I think having that voice at the school board to make those decisions is essential, right? And I get that there's many different ways to do this throughout the state. I think there's some rural schools that don't really allow any teacher voice unless spoken to. I think there's some schools that do allow time for teachers to speak every single meeting, and that's great, but it's not standard. It's not a standardized practice throughout the state. And I just think that it's a valuable voice to have on your school board, because everything the school board does affects these teachers.
Right. Well, and again, when we talk about collaboration or even innovation, I think in our business, regardless of who our employee is on the totem pole, we're listening to all ideas from all employees to put the best idea forward. And I don't know why a school board wouldn't do that, especially with what we've been seeing in school boards over the last 3 or 4 years. And I'm not just talking about funding mechanisms, but school boards are being bombarded by people bringing in these ideas. The teachers need to be at that table, right?
Right. And I think there's just, there's such a disconnect, right? And I'm trying to ease those tensions, right?
Sure.
I think the pendulum has swung a little more away from teachers in the last few decades, really. And it's just getting them in the room, right? So my personal experience, I was on the Downtown Neighborhood Association. We had a pretty contentious relationship with the Downtown Community Partnership. They were mostly for businesses. We were for residents, right?
Okay.
I was able to get on their board as a non-voting member. I saw that relationship just being so much better, and the tension has kind of dissipated since. Even though I'm not a voting member, I was still able to voice my opinion, and I don't talk every single meeting, right? I don't need to voice my opinion on everything, but at least I'm getting that information firsthand, and I can voice my opinion if I need to.
But the other thing I see about this, and tell me if you see it wrong, but I think of retaining and building institutional knowledge. My background's in business and business management, organizational change, and I want people to understand the processes so that they can grow. I think there's an older generation that had this idea that you're not going to teach your peers, and that creates job security. But I feel like our generation was emblazoned with this idea that you got to train your replacement before you can go. And if we can bring more people to the table to understand the process, what's the problem with that? They're not voting members. So you got my vote on that. Then I got to ask, DPI, North Dakota United, do they have voices on this? Or
yeah, so DPI is very in favor of this.
Okay.
I think North Dakota United also likes the idea of getting more voices in the room as well. I think it's just great to ease those tensions, foster those relationships, and really just give teachers a voice within their local school districts.
Now, do you have any other bills that you're pushing?
There's one more.
Okay.
So this actually came from a constituent that just got scheduled for next week. And so in this state, we have certain landlord obligations, right, to a tenant. And one of those obligations is reasonable heat, right? Okay. That's all it says in the Century Code, is just reasonable heat. So really, all this bill is doing is clarifying what reasonable heat is, and it's just 68 degrees from October to April. This constituent has had trouble with their landlord. She is currently, sitting in 65-degree apartment, and she has actually a sick, I feel an illness or sickness that
Okay.
requires her to not not be within the cold, right? And so she brought this to our attention, and so I'm pushing that bill as well for renters' rights.
I like that you're talking to people in your community. District 44, again, downtown north, a lot of rentals, I imagine, in that area, and that you're doing a good job representing your constituents. So kudos on you for that. And we have a rental or two. I want my rentals to have the best service. If anything's wrong, we have to get it taken care of right away. I'm hearing stories online that are adjacent to another bill that has to do with tenant rights. And I can't believe some of the stories I hear. It's like, again, let's take care of our people. Let's make sure that everyone has an opportunity to thrive and survive. And obviously heat in an apartment is part of that.
Yes, especially in this state.
Have you seen any, no, bill introductions have ended. So we had Zach Ist on last week. He talked about his favorite 4 worst bills.
Yeah.
We talked about them beforehand. Beyond those, have you seen any bad pieces of legislation pushed forward or been giving, due pass recommendations out of committee?
Yeah, so there's one bill in particular that I actually testified against this week, and it's a bill that would ban multi-stall gender-neutral restrooms in public spaces. And along with that bill, it also prohibits schools from prohibiting or inhibiting teachers to call students by certain genders.
Okay.
That got passed last session. They're strengthening it this session because they cite certain instances in local schools that wouldn't carry this forward because it goes against federal regulations.
Sure.
And so they're really trying to strengthen it so that schools cannot even have rules for this. And in my mind, it kind of is a pro-bullying bill because at least how I'm reading the bill, it not only discourages but encourages teachers to bully because quite frankly, a teacher can call a student whatever gender that they want, whether or not that they identify with that or not.
Sure.
And it's just really hard on a student, right? Especially like elementary kids. And then I think what I testified mostly, because I'm an architect, was the bathroom portion of that bill. And that bill stemmed from a project actually in Devil's Lake, where that was on that project. We designed it in a single stall restroom, just many, connected to each other. So it's all single stall restrooms.
Yep.
And then it's open, front just out into the hallway from there. It increases safety. It deters students from doing unscrupulous things in the bathroom. And it's also just more private, right? And to me, it's just so frustrating because I think, the intent of this bill is to have privacy and safety within the bathrooms. And we've created a solution for that architecturally. Yeah. And they want to ban it.
Well, no. So help me out. I got to repeat what you said in order to understand it. And I'll use a story. I was in San Francisco in 2019 for a conference. Went into a bathroom and there was full doors that accessed a single toilet. The doors, I imagine, had some sort of ceiling on them. So I mean, you don't want to hear your neighbor doing what they do. You came out of the door, and then there was a bay of sinks that anyone could use. So you had your privacy, full bottom to top door, and then you came out, washed hands with whomever. I don't see any problem with that. I actually see that as potentially saving space and dollars from having double the facilities by allowing everyone. Like, we don't want, I was just talking to a friend about the line that women have to deal with to use the bathroom. Does this architectural shift help provide access to toilets quicker too.
Yeah. I mean, you don't have to have half of the toilets just empty, right? And you're waiting in line, right? Access is also another thing that these.
I don't get it. So we've been in here for a couple of weeks, and I don't want to sound like a broken record, but every time I hear of a bill like this, I think, who is the party of freedom? Who is the party of local control? Like, why don't we let school boards be school boards? Why don't we let librarians be librarians? We need to let people do what we put them in a position to do. And I don't know why the legislature, the people who got elected to go to Bismarck, think that they should tell Devils Lake School what to do in their new school. That sounds ridiculous. You know what they should be doing is providing free lunches to all students, right? Because they already get laptops and basketballs, and we have to be able to support the people that we want to thrive.
Right.
Now I'll tell you, I wrote some notes. Can I pivot really quick?
Yep.
Term limits, which we didn't talk about prior. It was that House Bill 1300 that seeks to clarify the 8-year term limit on electeds that essentially, and your district is one of them, right?
Yep.
District 44 now has had 3 elections in a row, 2020, 2022, post redistricting, and now 2024, right?
I believe so.
I remember, I feel like Josh and Carla have been running.
They were running. I know they were running a while. Yeah.
So if you get elected in 2022 on a redistricting shift on an off cycle, you would serve a 2-year term, and then on your cycle get elected to your normal 4-year term. And now, even though that was an initiated measure that you voted for, electeds, Republicans in Bismarck want to seek clarity on it. But really, that's going to give another 4 years is what it's going to do, right? Do you have an opinion on this? I mean, does this affect Carla and Josh?
Yeah, so Carla, in a sense, would be termed out at the end of this term. How it's written right now. I get the intent of what the bill is trying to do, because it's not giving legislators the full 8 years that we were promised, right, or whatever.
Oh.
But also then it's giving us 10 years, which the voters did not ask for. And
right.
So in my mind, the voters voted on the measure, and that's how it was worded, and we should not touch it.
I would agree with you. And I'm sorry, Democrats are going to potentially lose an amazing representative. I don't know if that's going to happen in any other districts. I haven't done that math yet, but that's the will of the people.
Right. And I believe she voted against it too.
Sure.
So.
Well, and I don't want to make this about Carla. It's about the will of the people. It's about subverting that in Bismarck, because they, of course, know better than us. And one reason I wanted to bring that up first is because a new thing that I heard this week is House Concurrent Resolution 3003. Now, if you guys haven't seen this, give it a Google. Essentially what it does is it increases the amount of voters, increases the percent. So now we call it 50+1. If there's an initiated measure that changes the Constitution, right now, 50% of the people plus 1% or plus 0.1 would give that a pass. And what House Concurrent Resolution 3003 does, it would require a 60% voter approval. So if a constitutional amendment to, I don't know what a constitutional amendment would do, adjust property taxes, you would now need 60% majority to pass that. And I think, again, what the people in Bismarck are saying is that the people of North Dakota can't make decisions on their own, and they need to increase the threshold of people. So again, they're taking away your voice, the party of freedom, if you will. That's air quotes. If you're listening, we're saying freedom is limiting your freedom by restricting your voice. Have you heard or seen any testimony on this? Has this been to House floor, or is it still in?
It's been on the
Committee?
floor, and unfortunately, it did pass.
Oh my gosh, I can't believe that would come out of committee with a do pass.
Yes, it did pass by 2 votes because a resolution like that needs 2/3 of the House
Okay.
to pass it, and it did, and so it needed 63 votes and got 65. Very close, very close. But yeah, I mean, essentially, I will say, like, this needs to go back to the people, right? If this does pass the Senate and get signed, it will go back to it will go on a measure, right, in the next election. So the people will vote on it. But I mean, we've tried. There's been many measures that are trying to limit the voice of the people, and they've been killed every single time. And I don't see this passing on that. But I'm also like, why do we need to fast track it through the legislature? You know, this, if the people want this, if the people want the 6, then give it, have it be an initiated measure, right? Have the people get the signatures, bring it to the measure, right? And then they can vote on it.
You know, I start chuckling because I imagine as like a signature gatherer with a clipboard in the DOT parking lot and be like, hey, do you want to sign this initiated measure to limit your voice on constitutional measures in the future? Like, that'd be a hard sell.
Right.
And I don't know. I don't get it. And
I think it's also funny that if this does get passed, it's only going to be a simple majority that will enact it. If it goes through.
50% of you will make the requirement to make 60% of you. Have you heard anything about initiated measures next cycle?
I have not heard. I have not heard. You know, what people are thinking. I think if we don't do something about property tax, that'll come back on there for sure.
I do as well. And you know, I don't know if I mentioned it last week. I ran against Kelly Armstrong, of course. Sorry to be a broken record on that, but I actually really like his tax plan. I really like the fact that he's going to take interest off the legacy fund, throw it in its own self-sustaining fund, double the property tax rebate to $1,000. That still exempts corporations, it exempts companies like my rental company from getting that into a business entity. So I think that is a lot better positioned than the initiated measure was. I was so glad the initiated measure lost. I actually bet a couple small bets with friends. I thought it was going to pass. I was petrified. So I'm glad that didn't. But it definitely would have if you needed 60% majority. The only initiated measure I'm hearing rumblings about is an idea that we need to have an injection tax on carbon. So if the carbon pipeline comes through, which South Dakota just had a milestone, I believe they said that it wasn't, they couldn't eminent domain. Does that sound right?
Yeah, I don't know. I feel like South Dakota might not have eminent domain.
Yeah, I feel like South Dakota just had a land breaking case to shut that down.
Yep.
But if Summit Pipelines does come in, they do sequester carbon underneath our state. There should be a ticker on that, and that should give us another legacy fund. And I think that that would be a heck of a initiated measure. If you're listening out there and you have time and energy to do that, you got my vote, because that carbon is going to be down there. It's going to affect more people than we know. And I don't know why we wouldn't at least make a reclamation fund with it at a minimum. And again, start trying to get more money into a fund that will ensure the protection of our lands, that will ensure, our legacy as a state, right? So that's all I'm hearing on initiated measures. But anything you want to end with? Anything you're hopeful for? How do you feel about session? This is your first time out here?
First session. Yeah, it's been a giant learning experience. But I think I'm starting to get the hang of things. We're on week 4, something like that.
Sure.
It's been good. I'm hopeful. I think there's a lot of, whatever we call normal Republicans or whatever, that are, willing to work with us and are, willing to see reason. And that's really nice to see. I think that, this whole national rhetoric of Democrats versus Republicans doesn't necessarily come down to this state. It doesn't translate to this state because I
Sure.
think there's really three parties in this state, right?
Okay.
And we like to say that the moderate Republicans are as moderate as they can be, and the Democrats are kind of the actually governing body that's trying to do what's best for North Dakota.
Well, I'll tell you, since you brought it up, last week, Lisa Hermosillo and I, my co-host, talked about what defines the Democrats here in the state of North Dakota. Do you want to take a crack on that?
Yeah, I mean, I hate the word common sense, right?
Okay.
Because I think it can mean many different things to many people, but I just think we have common sense, right? We want what's best for our constituents. We want what's best for North Dakota. I think people think of Democrats and they're always like, oh, there's the far left and what agenda, blah, 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 blah. And it's like, we just want the things that you want. We want a good education, a good standard of living. We want our, we want to harness our energy here, but also be environmentally responsible, and we want people to move here because they want to move here because we're a welcoming society. We say North Dakota nice. Let's prove it, right? And I think the Democrats prove it every single day.
Well, we got to touch on something real quick, because when I watch the news, and all I watch is the nightly news, Lester Holt. I don't do MSNBC. I don't do partisan political news. I do a little bit of political on my phone, but I'm seeing these major disasters all over the United States. We had hurricanes that swept up the inner East Coast, and now we just had California on fire. And I think I'm so glad. I think every day I love North Dakota. I love the people here. I love the culture. If you had to ask me what the best thing about North Dakota is, I wouldn't say it's the wheat fields. I wouldn't say it's the Badlands. I have my favorite roads, but what I think about North Dakota is that you have to experience it. You have to eat a farm meal in a wheat field on a tailgate during harvest. That is something that you just have to experience.
Mm-hmm.
You can't talk about it. You can't take a picture of it. You have to be stranded in a snowstorm on the side of the road, and someone's going to pick you up without a question. And that's what I think makes North Dakota great. So I hope we get a population influx as we do see these disasters, and we do see changes that make us a little bit more diverse, changes that bring innovation into North Dakota. And that's what I want. I want a sustainable environment. And you said something too about energy production.
Mm-hmm.
I was out in the Bakken for 5 years, and it was hot and heavy. It was Wild West, and I absolutely support that. I support the people who are working in the oil fields. I support the coal industry, but I also think that we need to put checks and balances in place so that energy development is regulated to some point. I know that's a big, scary word for some people, but let's regulate it so that it is as environmentally friendly as possible. Let's capture that natural gas. We're just burning it. Have you ever been out there to see the flares? Oh my gosh, there's this flare south of Stanley, north of the Scenic 23, which is east of Newtown. There's that cut across road. It's the biggest flare I've ever seen in my life. You almost feel it from the road.
Yeah.
I think we should capture that and send it to schools so they can have free heat.
Right.
Or your tenant doesn't have to be at 65
Right.
degrees.
Exactly.
Well, I appreciate it, Austin. Any
you so
last
much,
words
Patrick.
you want to get out to the constituents, to your people in North Dakota?
We're doing our best out here, and we're doing the best for you and our constituents and the people of North Dakota. Just having a blast.
I appreciate you.
Welcome back to UNDeterred. This is Jamie Selzler with Adam Goldwyn. Adam is the chair of the North Dakota Democratic MPL. Thanks for being on UNDeterred, Adam.
Yeah, it's exciting. Thanks for having me.
So a lot of our viewers and listeners today have maybe seen your name or gotten an email from you at some point, but why don't you maybe tell people a little bit, who are you, what's your background, and what brought you to this role in our party?
Yeah, so I'm Adam Goldwyn. I'm the chair of the North Dakota Democratic Nonpartisan League, and I think that we as a democratic republic have an obligation, each of us, to govern ourselves. And so I moved to North Dakota, and I've always sort of believed that politics isn't something that's over there for those other people to do, and we're supposed to just sort of sit there, right? Politics is something that's for all of us. And so about 10 years ago, I just walked into my local office and said, I'm a citizen of this state. I walked into my local Dem office and said, what am I supposed to do? How do I get involved here? And, I just did the things that basic grassroots organizers do. We knocked on doors, we stuffed envelopes, we had conversations with the neighbors. And then I was elected chair, and then I was elected vice chair of the Cass County Democrats, and then a little while later to the Democratic National Committee. And I guess people thought I was doing a good job representing their values in these various forums. And so I decided to run for chair of the state party a year and a half ago, and I'm running for re-election at our next meeting in May. And I just think, fundamentally, politics is a participatory adventure for all of us. And if we're not making decisions for ourselves, then we're letting someone else make those decisions. And I'd rather be us.
Yeah. You're enjoying being chair. Obviously, you're a chair at an incredibly challenging time, not just in our state, but in our country.
Yeah.
What's that like?
Enjoying might be too much of a stretch. There's definitely some parts that are extremely fun. But overall, all of it's very meaningful. And, we face a really challenging time in the history of our nation. And in a way, I wish that we didn't have the chaos and corruption and destruction of our country that we've seen in Trump administration 1 and Trump administration 2. But, I've always sort of wondered, who is Adam Goldwyn? What is he capable of? What will he do in trying times? Will he shrink, or will he rise to the occasion? And that's something you can't really know about yourself until the opportunity arises. And, Donald Trump has given each of us the opportunity to find out who we are, to find out who our neighbors are, to find out who our elected representatives really are. I think all of us have had that extraordinarily disappointing moment where the politician or the leader that we admired sort of knuckled under to things that we thought that would be beneath them. I mean, I think about Marco Rubio, who endured, the little Marco mockery, and now he's decided to be Secretary of State and has gone out to advocate ethnic cleansing in Gaza. I mean, that's just one example of any number of politicians who stood up, and said like, "Oh, I'm in politics because we need a moral country," and then, to support this philandering lawbreaker, or politicians say, "Oh, I back the blue," and then say nothing when he pardons January 6th insurrectionists. So, I think there's plenty of examples of people like that who, have shrunk in trying times. And, overall, the main part for me of, one of the great privileges of being state party chair is the chance to really test who I am. And, if it's easy, it's not worth doing. It's these trying times that really show us who we are. And that's why I continually call on all citizens of North Dakota, of the country, not just Democrats, not just independents, Republicans. We all have an obligation to govern ourselves in this country, and to do so with patriotism, and integrity.
Yeah, I think right now everyone's sort of dealing with what's going on in different ways and wondering what they can do. And my message to folks is just do what you can and what you feel comfortable with and what you like. So in your case, it's being state party chair, running for re-election. In others, it might be sharing something on social media, or talking to your neighbor, going to a district reorganization meeting. Whatever you can do, you should do. And I think you're showing that by example.
Yeah, I mean, our DNC chairperson, who we just elected, Ken Martin, one of his sort of repeated phrases that stuck with me is he always says, "No one can do everything, but everyone can do something." And I think that's so true. All those calls we're making to our Congress people, all those letters we're writing, all those emails, even, like we say we should get out from our computers and do stuff, but those Facebook posts, those Instagram posts, those TikToks, they matter, everything that we're doing. And, I think I come from a union organizing background. I put myself through graduate school as a union organizer, going door to door among the graduate students, trying to get them to sign our union election cards. And, again, over in Minnesota, our DNC chair now, Ken Martin, he always says, organize, organize, organize. And I think that, I'm the state party chair, yes, and that has opportunities and obligations to represent who we are. But, you listener, in your community, talking to your neighbor about the issues that you believe important and representing the values that you believe stand for, North Dakota, you're the best validator. As much as people do want to hear from the state party chair, my capacity to change minds is limited by the formal title and everything. But neighbors talking to neighbors about the real issues that affect them in their day-to-day lives, that's really where I believe political change happens.
Absolutely. So you mentioned the new DNC chair, Ken Martin. You were at a DNC meeting. We were there together this last weekend, very recently. Why don't you maybe just take a few minutes to tell us about what the meeting was like, what your experience was? I know it's not something that many people ever really get the chance to do, and are probably really curious about what happens at something like that.
Sure. So I was elected to the DNC, I think 4 years ago now, as a committee man, the position that Jamie, that you have now. And I thought, I'd heard the stories about the DNC rigging it for Hillary against Bernie, and the DNC, the secret cabal of whatever. And I was like, all right, I'm inside the secret cabal now. Let's do
part of the group.
Let's do some secret caballing. And actually, what I found was 450 volunteers. I mean, almost all volunteers. And for those who don't know, my role as state party chair is a volunteer position. I volunteer just like any other person in North Dakota Dem-NPL. But what I found at the DNC was there's just 450 volunteers from all across the country giving up their time, giving up their money, trying to organize to make our country a better, more inclusive, more welcoming, healthier, happier, more thriving environment. So that was a little disappointing because I vote for the cabal, but it was also, extremely inspiring. And our meeting that we had last week, I think it's fair to say that the rapid ferocity of the assault on our institutions in the last 2 weeks from the Trump administration has left us all a little bit on our back feet, not quite poised aggressively to push back and to challenge all of these things. And so I think the meeting at the DNC was really, the main business, of course, was electing our leadership team. And that leadership team, again, is people from all walks of life, from all parts of this country. And I think now that we have that leadership team in place, we can begin to see the election strategy and the aggressive messaging strategy that we're going to carry forward through the 2026 and 2028 election cycles. So that was really important to see that our leaders are that we have that leadership team in place. I would also add, that we hear a lot, especially in North Dakota, where we are relatively a small party. Why have the Dems given up? Is there no fight left in the Dems? Trump is inevitable, like Thanos. Inevitable, indomitable, unstoppable, and the Dems are secretly in hiding. But you go to that DNC meeting, that is not the case. Our party is prepared to fight. Our party has energy. Our party has organization. Our party, has the values and the message and is on the right side of the issues that, again, like if you're talking to your neighbors, what are the real issues that face real people in their real lives? What is Trump taxes going to do? These tariffs on the borders, right? They're just going to make building more expensive in a time of housing shortages and high rent. It's just going to make food products more expensive, in a time when the campaign was dominated by the cost of eggs. So, what are the things that are actually going to really help people in North Dakota, citizens around the country? Those are Democratic policies. They always have been since Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, minimum wage, week, the 5-day work week. All of these things are Democratic. The abolition of child labor laws, right? All of these things are Democratic priorities. It's always very inspiring to go to a DNC meeting and to come back and say, like, we actually come from an extremely large national party where there's a lot of fight. We're the oldest political party in the world. We weathered the Great Depression. We weathered the Civil War. We weathered World War II. We weathered the Civil Rights Movement, right? Our party has been the great constant in the history of this great nation, and will continue to do so and continue to be that. And I think that's really the great takeaway from the DNC for me.
Yeah, we'll have you back on to probably go in a lot more detail on this down the road. But I think one thing that Ken Martin is going to bring to this role is he knows North Dakota, he knows rural areas, he knows red states, and knows what some of our needs are here that are maybe a little bit different. So I'm eager to have him in this role and expand our base a bit that way. But within our last minute or two here, if you have any final thoughts to share about maybe what you think, a listener or we as a state party can do to start winning again. I know it's a big question. We could probably talk for an hour, and I would like to talk about it in more detail, but there's sort of like one takeaway that you want to give people. What would it be?
Yes, my one takeaway is that, again, sort of what I started with. Politics is not some distant thing that those people over there do, right? Politics is something that happens every day in our communities. Every time we have a conversation with a neighbor or a coworker about the things we value, about how we organize our society, we don't have to. Most political conversations aren't sort of like hard partisan Democratic persuasion or hard partisan Republican, persuasion. They're mostly just conversations about how we live our lives and how we want our society to be. We want our society to be more fair and equitable. We want our society to welcome people from all walks of life. We want people to actually have the chance to just live how they want without the government telling them how to live, right? These are actually core democratic values. So I think the main message is, we all might hope for some gigantic knockout blow, right? Impeachment, and then we're problem solved. Or, we win this election, problem solved. And those would have been great. But, that's not the situation we're in. The way we're going to win in North Dakota is by invisibly small incremental conversations, thousands upon thousands of conversations and text messages and Facebook posts and engagement like that by neighbors all across the state, just building this party up, just by talking about the things that make our communities better and making the case that the Democratic Party actually represents the values that actual North Dakotans actually talk about, right? So I think, the message is that, yes, I'm the state party chair and I have an obligation and a role to play. But everybody in the state, frankly, Republicans, Democrats, Independents, non-voters, we all have a part to play in the political life of our democratic state and our democratic nation. So I urge everyone in whatever small way they can, small or large, to get involved. And we are a volunteer party and a big tent party. And I'll just close with this image that I heard at the DNC. We often talk about ourselves as a big tent party. And we talk about bringing people to the middle. But if you bring people to the middle, the tent will collapse. So our big tent party is actually, people standing pretty far apart on the far corners of what we're doing. And it's okay that I'm over on this side and I believe these things. And you're on the other side of our party holding up that tent post over there. And we don't have to agree on everything. And that's what makes us a big tent party. Some core values that all help us stay in this big tent together.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for your time today. I encourage the listeners to go to our website, DemNPL.com, to look at upcoming events. I know you'll be at a number of the reorganization meetings and have a chance to visit with you in person and share some feedback as well. So until next time, very much appreciate your time.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Right, thanks so much. And we'll be right back with Undeterred. Thank you, Austin and Adam, for visiting with us this week. Austin is learning a ton, but also having a big impact in Bismarck and certainly has a great future with North Dakota Democrats and in the state. So congrats on your win, Austin, and thanks for being with us this week. And congrats again to Adam on your win as vice president for the state chair organization. We're proud to have you here in North Dakota representing us. Before we wrap, I just want to send a quick invite to those who are in Western North Dakota or the southwest part of the state. Districts 36, 37, and 39 have their district reorg this Wednesday, the 12th at 7 p.m. at Players Sports Bar in Dickinson. So I'll be there. Lisa will be there. And we certainly encourage you and invite you to come and be a part of the reorg, be among friends to celebrate our upcoming wins we're going to have and maybe just be with each other to talk about some of the things that are happening in our state and country right now. So 7 p.m. Wednesday at Players. Hope to see you there. Lisa, what do you have to share?
Well, here in Minot, our reorg meeting is happening March 8th. We do not have a time set up quite yet, but that'll be determined at our next meeting next Tuesday. And yeah, same thing. I'd like to invite everyone that's interested in coming out. This will cover districts 3, 4, 5, 38, 40. And if you are already planning to go, please bring a friend. I think it's gonna be a fun event, and I'm really looking forward to going to as many of these as possible.
Well, and I'll tell you guys, I already pushed my events in Bismarck on March 22nd, May 3rd, and Grand Forks on March 1st. So I'll end on this, you guys. A couple of years ago, I heard Josh Bose say that he absolutely hated when people said it's hard to be a Democrat in North Dakota. I think our values are really easy. We support families. We support, communities, labor unions. We support the betterment of all. I want everyone to have the same opportunities that I had. It's pretty simple. What he did say, though, is that it is hard to organize as a Democrat in North Dakota. And I think there is validity to that. So I'll use that intro to end on my quote this week. I think it's better for you if you work real hard, because then that way no one can take it away. I appreciate it if you leave in. Please, again, like, share, and subscribe. I appreciate you. Thank you.